Sorry about that. Okay, we're back up. Had a problem with the mic. Let's go over that real quick. We've got a lunar eclipse coming up, and there it is. It's going to be mostly the west coast that's going to be able to see that eclipse. The east coast, the sun is going to be coming up, and the moon is going to be setting, and this is how the view is going to look as we go into that eclipse. So from 5 to 6 Central, this is going to be valid for everywhere. 5 to 6 Central, we're going to be seeing the eclipse coming up towards its peak, and that peak will be at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, and then after that we'll be coming out of the eclipse. So just take your sunrise time, and that'll give you an idea of whether you will be able to see the moon. And also what was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, I'll just convert the times over, and that'll let you know whether you're going to be able to see that lunar eclipse. So anyway, that's coming up tomorrow morning in about 10 hours or so. Okay, let's go ahead and get to the charts here. I'm glad I caught that microphone problem early. I'm not sure what happened. Sometimes the mixer here tends to be a little bit flaky. So anyway, this is the pattern right now. We've got a Canadian low pressure system traversing west to east, and it's actually the snow bands on the north and northwest side that's going to be dumping snow. It's going to leave a snow track going all the way from British Columbia across the prairie provinces, and that, when we finally do clear out, that's going to be a ripe area for polar air development. And as we can see, that's going to kind of supercharge this Alberta Clipper coming south, and that'll be heading into the Midwest over the next few days. Further south, we've got downslope conditions. This is a classic map for downslope air, and by downslope I'm talking about the pressure lines, these isobars. This is pointing towards a southwesterly flow across Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, and you can see these temperatures. They've come up to the 50s and 60s at this hour. And also, not only do we have the downslope flow, we've got a lee side trough. And when I'm talking about lee side, the front range is located right here, and then downwind of the Rockies, that tends to be an area where we usually see a low pressure area that develops in these strong westerly flow patterns when we have strong zonal flow. So that'll kind of hold it ground until we have the next big wave come through, and we'll check the models for that. Other than that, you can see that we've got high pressure moving on off to the east. So a couple of cold nights on the east coast as that moves towards the east, and then we'll be opening up the Gulf most likely. This is when we usually see the Gulf start to open, with the high receding off to the east. And then off to the west coast. Looks pretty quiet. Looks like a very weak plateau high in the Four Corners area. And then we've got the Pacific system here, maritime polar air mass source covering Oregon and Washington, and it's pushing this front onshore that's around Nevada and Idaho. So with that in mind, actually we can take a look up north. Let's do that. See what's going on way up north in Canada. And yeah, we're developing some polar air way up to the north. You can see a huge area of 1032 millibars covering this large area, and then we get up further up towards the Chukchi Sea, 1040 millibars up there near Barrow. And we can see temperatures starting to come down to -20 in this area in the Northwest Territories and the Yukon. So it is starting to cool down. Okay, before I go much further, let me take a look and see how our audio is doing and check in with everybody. We have Sue M here and David Moore saying good evening. Calling windy and dry in northwest Texas. Relative humidity of 10%. Yeah, that's getting into fire danger weather there. We have Fun with Tech here and Adam Davis. Oh man, yeah. Sounds like you took a fall there. Sorry to hear that. Bayou Grande. Not sure if I got that right. Welcome, and Rat Bastard also joining us. Bayou's there in Phoenix. And Burl H. thanking me for the scripting help with Digital Atmosphere. Let's see here. A couple notes about no audio earlier. And Ryan Toomey's there in Florida, reporting a beautiful day today. Mid-60s all day there in the Fort Lauderdale area. Windy, gusts up to 15 to 20 knots. And Mark Sanchez reporting 70s in Vegas. Very good. A couple notes real quick before I get much further. I mentioned the lunar eclipse. Also, I'm gradually working on setting up kind of a broadcasting operation here. And I'll plan on getting the webcams going here soon. And I'm going to try to bring in that 100 down and 10 up cable modem. And hopefully we'll get that up maybe in about a week or so. And Patreon donors, I haven't really thanked you properly, but there's the current list of Patreon donors. And we've lost a couple, Lloyd, Jason, Guido, and Robert. If it was just an oversight or if you're donating through another means, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, sorry to see you go there. And for the rest of you, thank you for your contributions to the channel, and I can assure you it's going towards a good cause here, and I'm hoping to roll out some big plans for the spring as we get into severe weather season. So thank you, Michael, Steve, Robert, Jeremy, Ronnie, David, Sarah, John Buma, Ryan, Burl, Alexi, Caleb, Tom and Thomas, and Kevin and Theodore, John and Harold. So thank you very much. All right. Let's see here. Okay, getting back into the surface chart. This pretty much paints a cold front from the Dakotas down to Wyoming, and maybe a tail end going into Nevada there. So definite cold air up in the Pacific Northwest and Montana up here. And then we can definitely see lots of tropical air all the way from Texas to the Four Corners and the southwest U.S. So that's a tropical air mass, and sometimes we write that as MT for maritime tropical. And then up in the northwest states, we would probably go with maritime polar. And that would be mixed a bit with continental polar. And pretty much the dividing line is somewhere right around here. So the maritime polar air mass would be here, and the continental polar air mass there, and they kind of come together in this region right there. So baroclinic system moving across Manitoba, heading into Ontario there. And then we have our outgoing system there near the Gulf Stream waters. And that's heading on out. And this looks like to be a very potent baroclinic system. You can see that it's not occluded. It's still somewhat open. And what I mean is the warm sector has this appearance here. This is all warm sector, so it hasn't quite wrapped up like, I don't know if I have an example here. No, I don't have an example on this map, but yeah, typically when we have these systems deepen, we get occlusion, and we get more of a appearance like that of the warm sector. It just kind of wraps on in. So this is still going to be deepening for the next 24 to 48 hours, and as that heads towards Greenland, this may be quite a very deep system going through that part of the Atlantic. And there's our outgoing polar air mass right there over the eastern U.S. Okay, going to the other charts, let's look at the upper air. This is the 300 millibar analysis. At this time, it's mostly zonal. So it's mostly west to east except for this little trough on the east coast. So So there's one trough right there, a ridge over the Lake Superior, Wisconsin and Iowa area. And believe it or not, there's actually a ridge under here. It's just flattened out because it's traveling through the long wave trough. And by the long wave trough, I'm talking about this big feature here. So there's a small scale ridge moving through there. And one way we can find these features is through the heights and vorticity. And let me see if I can find that. Yeah, there it is. There's the heights and vorticity chart. It's definitely a big help around this time of year. And typically what we're looking at is we're looking for the smaller scale waves. Those are really what have an impact on the mesoscale, on the small scale features. And that can be very important as we get into severe weather season. So that's a fairly small feature. But a lot of times we're looking for even smaller scale features, maybe like that or like that. And this chart can help us pick out those details and resolve that with satellite. So let's see here. Not much going on really, just kind of a channeled flow in the Pacific Northwest. That's a polar front jet right there, another branch in North Dakota and northern Minnesota, and then this other branch. That is also very channeled in the Carolinas and off into the Gulf Stream. Okay, let's see. Let's go back to the beginning of the sequence. Probably not a lot to look at on, not much to look at on these mesoscale charts. Maybe I'll show you Texas real quick. Let me bring this up. So, southwesterly flow, you can definitely see that there in West Texas. And you can see the warm temperatures where we have orange coloring. 61 degrees there at Lamar. So definitely a very warm day. So overnight, there's the cooling overnight. So it looks definitely cold in the Memphis area right there. And on up into the Ohio River Valley. And then for tomorrow, more downslope, and you can see how much more it warms up. We got 70s, and especially right off the caprock right here around Turkey and Paducah and Childress. Looks like it's going to be getting close to 80 in some areas right there. But just to the north, we've got a new polar front coming south. There it is right there. And a little bit of a baroclinic low right there, just a very weak wave. And then we pick up the warm front right there. So that's probably how we would analyze that chart right there. And somewhere in this area right here, I think we probably do have a dry line. And just as a quick guess, maybe something like that. This is a chart for tomorrow at 3 p.m. So downslope flow here, and then you can see the flow off the Gulf coming up from the south. So this chart is definitely going to be a lot of fun as we get into spring when we get into severe weather season. So we'll definitely make more use of that. Okay, tomorrow night, you can see that front coming down from Oklahoma there. And then for the next day, already up to Thursday, getting to the end of the week here already. Cold front coming down through Texas, past I-30 in Arkansas, and coming through Paducah and Memphis there. So some mild polar air coming down out of the north there. Okay, and then we'll just go ahead and take a look up north. I think most of our viewers are up in the Midwest. So we'll show you this chart here. So you can see earlier today a lot of cold air up in northern Wisconsin and Minnesota there. Looks like some single digits, but southerly flow, downslope flow. It's going to be a warm-up, so I'll show you this. Let me advance this up to the afternoon, and you can see the warm-up right there. So 50s in Kansas way down here, contrasting sharply with teens and 20s up around La Crosse and Minneapolis and Madison. So in between, definitely a warm front, and we're going to put that on the warm side of the gradient. So most likely, I would say probably a warm front somewhere in there. So we're going to look for that warm front to move north overnight and into tomorrow. So it's kind of hard to pick out at the night during the nighttime hours, but as we warm up tomorrow, looks like that warm front is right around there, coming into Illinois right there. And we've also got the cold front dropping south. And just off to the bottom there, looks like a little curl there where we have the baroclinic low down in Oklahoma. In fact, let me just move this up and you can see it. This is kind of the features that we look for during severe weather season. You know, closed lows like that, very subtle, very small scale, and that can be very important. You can see the backed winds out ahead on the northeast side of that. That can give us a little bit of backed winds for a curved photograph. But no supercells for tomorrow, so we don't have to worry about that. And then let's see here, heading into Thursday. Wow, look at that cold air coming in from the north. Okay, so yeah, winter is coming back. This is on its way south. So we'll look at the GFS and evaluate that. But wow, 3 p.m. temperatures here. This is 3 p.m. You can see single digits all the way from southern Minnesota all the way to Lake Michigan. So a very cold day up there. But just a short drive down to the south, around Carbondale and Joplin. It's going to be about 50 degrees there. Okay, one way we could take a look at this cold air mass is to look at the soundings. And before I get into the soundings, let's look at the surface chart to see where we want to sample. There's our cold air coming south right there, so maybe we should do a sounding around Saskatchewan or Alberta. So we'll change back to this, and looks like we have a choice of Flin Flon or actually the Pas. I think it's called the Pas, French maybe, and Edmonton. So I'll go with Manitoba here. So there's our sounding right there for Manitoba, and you can definitely see the polar air below about 14,000 feet. The sounding goes way over to the left, showing that we have very cold temperatures in the low levels, about minus 20 Celsius right there. That's how we read the sounding. But then above that, if we drop this down to the surface, usually I go down kind of at an angle like this to the down and to the right of the moist adibats and down and to the left of the dry adibats. So I go down kind of like this here. And you can see that this brings me to the surface here, and temperatures around 10 to 15 Celsius, which is very warm. So we've definitely got some tropical air aloft from about 16,000 feet up to about 24,000. So that right there, that's do I want to call it maritime tropical? Maybe modified maritime tropical, but yeah, that's what we have aloft right there. Above that we have the stratosphere, and then below that we've got definitely the continental polar air mass. So very cold air, and then what you see right here, this is the frontal inversion. So a very thick layer there, that's an inversion, and it suppresses upward motion. And then another way we can look at it is off to the right here, the wind fields. You can see that we've got north winds all the way up to about 8,000 feet, and then above that it turns westerly. So basically everything below that is strong northerly flow, and then above that it starts transitioning to westerly. So again, this is for Manitoba here. And then we can try going up a little bit further north. Let's try Churchill, up here around Hudson Bay, polar bear capital of the world, and they've got some tundra buggy tours. I think I've mentioned this before, maybe about a year ago. I'm hoping to maybe do that one of these days. They've got these huge, let me just bring this up, tundra buggy. This is in Churchill, way up there on the Arctic Ocean, and believe it or not, they've actually got a railroad line that goes all the way up there, because I think during the Cold War they were thinking about moving grain out through the Hudson Bay region. So now they're doing ecotourism kind of stuff, and you can see these. They've got these, I don't know what they are, but they're mounted on these huge wheels, and they've got them linked up like trains. They've got sleeper cars and dining cars. It's kind of like a giant train, and yeah, I guess you get to meet up with the bears there. So anyway, some pretty neat stuff there. So let's bring up a sounding up in that area. Wow, way over to the left there, so definitely some very cold air. So starting out 25 to 30 Celsius, and then pretty much everything above that, this is all going to be polar air. And then I think we probably hit some of the tropical air, modified tropical air, up at about 16,000 feet. And then above that, stratosphere. Sorry, that's not all on the diagram. There we go. Stratosphere, modified maritime polar, or maritime tropical, and then continental polar below that. So let's go a little further north. We'll go up to Baker Lake. We'll just keep going north and see what happens. You can see the sounding is starting to change over a little bit. We're seeing the tropopause drop. Everything is moving way over to the left. And then we'll go all the way up to Cambridge Bay, up near the dew line. There's the tropopause up at about 28,000 feet. Surprised how high that is. And then Resolute Bay way up at the top. There's that. Let me see if I can go all the way up to the Arctic Ocean, all the way up to the northern areas. Let me go up to the Arctic here. Yeah, alert. That's pretty much right on the North Pole there. Somebody actually has to go out and launch this balloon in this minus 30 air. I would definitely do it. When I was in the Air Force, I never launched any radiosonde balloons, but that would have definitely been interesting to do. Anyway, yeah, you can see a little bit of a front-on version right there. It looks like some actual warm air up above that. See if we bring that down. Yeah, that's some fairly mild air aloft. But we were talking yesterday about that deep southerly flow coming up from the Pacific, and I know they also got a shot coming up from around Greenland. So the Arctic Basin has really been hit by a lot of warm air surging up in that region, and I think that's what we're seeing here. And that explains probably why the tropopause is so high, but definitely some Arctic air beneath that. Okay, so let's look at the soundings, kind of an extended look at all that. There's our temperature anomaly. Lots of warm air in the plains, and you can see the effect of that downslope flow there in Texas and Kansas. Also very warm in the desert southwest there. And we can also see the cold air coming out of Canada. And I'll give you a quick sneak peek at tomorrow. Let's see, 6/18/24. Okay. Yeah, there's our chart for midday. Let me bring this all the way up to evening. There we go. So this is how it's going to look during the evening. Looks like some unusually warm air. Is that correct? See, I thought we were going to be seeing single digits up in that area, and I'm trying to reconcile what might be happening there. 31st. Okay. Yeah, I think that cold air was supposed to be coming down a little bit later. So anyway, let me bring that up a little bit further. There we go. You can see the cold air surging south. And then by the weekend, quite a huge surge into the eastern U.S. there, and more of it generating up from Saskatchewan to northern British Columbia to Yukon, and looks like a very strong gradient here from west of Calgary up to Prince George there. So we're going to have to take a look at some surface charts there over the weekend. I bet that's going to be pretty spectacular to check out. And then the day after that, there's our anomaly, and got another chunk of cold air coming south. Okay, with that, I think we can take a look at the chat one more time, and usually around this time I put up the satellite photo. So I'll give you a bit of the Pacific there. This is the water vapor imagery. So it looks like we got a little bit of a Pineapple Express coming up from the south. This area here, I always think of that as the Gilligan's Island area, because I recall in that show they always described the island as being like 500 miles southeast of Hawaii, way down here. Other than that, there's nothing down there, but there is some moisture coming up from the south, and that'll be impacting the Pacific coast here in a few days. Okay, let's see here. Megan John reporting 27 and a brisk wind in Minnesota. Fred Reamer mentioning blowing snow and blowing dust is gone from Grand Forks. Mountain waves in Wyoming today. And 28 degrees there. Sue M mentioning 29 degrees there. Carl Berghoff is late, and Megan John a wave of bitter cold. And driving to Minnesota Arrowhead this weekend. Fred Reamer says our high temperature will be 12. Will be at 12 midnight tonight with a cool down. And Fred says he did Churchill in 91. That sounds like a lot of fun. And Adam Davis doesn't envy any of those Polar Radiosonde personnel. And Sue M says, what does the blue moon have to do with the eclipse? Yeah, I forgot to mention the blue moon. It's coincidental. Blue moon is when we have two full moons in the same month, and we're at the end of the month, and we've got both the eclipse and the blue moon here. So, yep, they're just coincidental there. Okay, let's take a look at our forecast. Okay, there's that plume of moisture coming up from the Gilligan's Island zone there. So that's heading up north. And let's see where that goes. You can see it moving up north. And looks like that takes aim on Washington and Oregon there. But some of it will be working up into British Columbia and southeast Alaska. And some of it will be crossing the mountains too. And that can be responsible for some heavy precip where that comes down, especially where we have cold air. That's going to produce some new snowpack and help generate polar air up in that region. And not surprisingly, you can see we dislodged some strong high pressure areas right there. This is around the 8th. And here comes another shot, big 1050 millibar high, centered way up there in the northern, off the north slope. And this one moves, I think I caught a 1060 in here somewhere. Yeah, there's 1060 right there on the 10th. So this is definitely a very intense high pressure area. And that's going to come straight southeast right there. And there it goes into the U.S. on the 13th. And then we generate more high pressure up here. And this next shot moves south towards the very end of the frame on the 15th there. You can see it looks like about a 1054 millibar high there. So it looks like, yeah, the Polar Express is going to be open starting around the second week of February here. And that'll impact pretty much everywhere from this region on down south. So we'll go ahead and compare that with the European model. We'll just kind of keep tabs on what the European model is doing. So here's our high pressure moving out. There it goes. There goes the Canadian system. And here's outbreak number 1. European model bringing that down pretty aggressively on the first. And we get a 1040 millibar high right there. So this first one probably will be a little bit more mild, or initially it will be mild, and then here comes outbreak number 2 on the 3rd and 4th. And then number 3 coming down on the 6th and 7th. This is about 1035 millibar. It's not too strong there. And then we're recharging once again. Very deep low up there in Alberta. And then this next high looks to be coming more from the Pacific. And then it looks like we probably got a little bit of hint of a polar one up in the northwest Canada area. Let me see if I can bring that up on the hemispheric. Yeah, here you can see the first outbreak coming south. Then here's number 2. Wow, quite a vortex here over Greenland and Labrador, Hudson Bay. Then here comes number 3. This one looks a little bit weak around the 6th. And then number 4, yeah, this one is crossing the North Slope and the Beaufort. I'm trying to remember the names of the seas up here, but yeah, it's going to be north of Alaska. I can see 1052 millibar coming across. This is the last frame here, but this looks like to be definitely a very cold one. This is around the 9th. And then here's the Pacific high right there. So we'll go ahead and put it together with the GFS. And there we go. Outgoing high right there, and here's the first outbreak coming south. So this is Wednesday and Thursday. The main low pressure area stays pretty much up in Canada and even stays clear of the Great Lakes, but there will be a little bit of lake effect snow there with the northwest flow. And you can see the strong cold air advection coming in from the north. And that's where the front itself will be on Thursday morning. And that cold air will continue sinking south on Thursday and Friday, driven by this 1038 millibar high. And that high will clear the Mississippi River and Kentucky area on the 3rd. And then here comes shot number 2. And that comes southward on the 3rd and 4th. I think that's fairly close to what the European model was calling there. So that's just going to keep pushing southeast. And then we get up to outbreak number 3 on the 6th. There it comes. This one's going to be weaker, and I think the European model was calling for that to be weak also. And then we build in the 4th one. And this one looks to have a little bit more wintry weather around the 7th and 8th. Bit of an Ohio Valley system coming together there on the leading edge. And since we're getting 200 hours out, the exact evolution of this high and the cold air and the storm system is still going to be up in the air here. 1050 millibar high coming south, so GFS very pessimistic here around the 8th and 9th, and the models have been signaling that things are going to get probably intense around the 8th and 9th. They've been kind of hitting that date kind of hard there, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. And this comes on south. There it goes. And then we recharge for outbreak number, what is this, 4? This is a 1056 high. And that goes straight south on the 11th. And you can see 1058 millibar right there over Montana. GFS going for a little bit of wintry precip in Texas on the 12th. And I think we're probably not over. There comes a mild one. And then I think we're recharging once again up north on the 15th and 16th. And yeah, there it comes. 1052 millibar high coming in. So we've got at least about 5 polar outbreaks coming in. It looks like it's going to be a very cold one here for the middle of February. Okay, so that's probably about all I got. Taking a quick look at chat here, and all right, I think we're good. So that's about all I got for tonight. Thank you for watching the webcast, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. So have a good one, and don't forget the eclipse coming up tomorrow morning, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.